It's endemically the problem with record labels today that they do not spend the time to develop artists. So if I could give any artist or any band the greatest key is build your fan base. Get out on the road however you can. Demonstrate that you've sold 5,000 CDs. Because the record labels today want it delivered on a silver platter. I could never have signed Prince today in this atmosphere. They want to come out and see you. The labels that I have seen want instantaneous hits. They don't want to develop you. They don't want to, waste 2 or 3 albums. It's too expensive. Radio promotion is too expensive. Marketing is too expensive. So they want you to come intact like you've been on the road and you're the Rolling Stones after the 15th year, and they want you to have, 5 hits under your belt. The greatest thing that happened at Warner Brothers back in 1977 was I had to go convince the chairman of Warner Brothers, Mo Austin, that a 17-year-old kid who had never made a record before was going to produce his own album in the studio. And he looked up at me and he said, okay, I believe in this artist. I believe we're going to have to waste an album. But I'll give it to you. I'll stand behind you. And he did that. And that would never happen today in today's atmosphere. It just won't happen. They'd look at you like you were crazy. They want it all delivered on a silver platter. It's wrong. Record labels, the record labels should be developing artists. That's their business, not bringing it to them on a silver platter. Because what happens is you have an A&R man at a record label, A&R person at a record label, and they're not being groomed and developed, because if they sign the XYZ Act and that act doesn't make it, they're out of a job. It's like instantaneous. It's the McDonald's. The biggest problem today is the lack of development of artists and people within companies that passionately, and outside of companies, managers, people inside of record labels that will passionately fight for their artists. Case in point with Prince again. The senior vice president who became eventually the chairman of Warner Brothers, a guy named Russ Thyrett. He was senior vice president of radio promotion at that time, and we became best friends at that time. He's one of the reasons that Prince got signed to Warner Brothers. He walked into a meeting and said, if you don't sign this kid, I quit this company. There's no one that would ever do that these days. Plus, the system is a little broken down. I know I'm going to get my hands hit with a ruler for saying this. What the behemoth record labels do these days, and they've always done it, but now people are growing tired of it, and I think the internet is going to eventually, in the next 20 years, is going to throw some competition at it, is the big behemoth record labels will loan you $500,000 to live on and make your album, okay? And then you incrementally pay that back to them through your record royalties, maybe $1.50 or $2 an album, you pay that back to them. And gee, one day you've paid all that money back. Isn't that terrific? But guess what? They still own your creative work, your album. It'd be like if you came to me as a painter and you said, can you loan me money? I'm a Van Gogh. And you create the most wonderful painting and I loan you, $1,000 to make that painting. And then you pay me that money back and I still own your painting. That's going to have to get changed. But I don't think it's going to happen this year. I think it's going to happen many, many moons, down. So what happens to an atmosphere where bands aren't developed anymore? You have these McDonald hit bands. You get these boy bands that come up. And you get these bands that, that's why people are complaining about music these days, for the most part. You get this McDonald's atmosphere, this music is pushed out on radio, and you have to pay promotion men to go out and get these things played on radio. You can only push the most instantaneous thing. You get bands that are never going to leave their mark on this earth. I'd love to name them right now, but I'm not going to. But we all know who they are. They are not going to leave their mark on this earth. We haven't seen a band come along that's going to, I think maybe U2, Nirvana for me was one of the last bands that, I'm sure a lot of people argue, but, when I first heard Nirvana in 92 or whatever it was like, oh, thank God, we're back to some real music again. I don't see that happening. And I turn on the radio and it's like, oh my gosh, this is pablum. This is, it's just BS. And yet it's moving out there. The development is gone. And that is a sad state of affairs for truly creative artists. the nurturing, the passion. So I'm sorry, I know I'm an older guy, but I grew up in a day where if it was good, and you fought for it. And we weren't worried about the numbers that much. We were worried about your development as a creative artist. So my thing for bands today is do as much of your creative development early on. Get honest, get real about your songs.